My irresponsible fiancée sat me down and told me I needed to grow up. Caitlin arranged her face into what I can only describe as an intervention expression. She sat across from me at the dining table in my apartment, the one I had bought and furnished and maintained for 3 years before she moved in 6 months ago. She had printed documents, actual printed documents in a folder that she placed on the table between us like evidence in a trial. Her hands were folded on top of the folder, her expression serious, her voice steady when she said I needed to have a serious conversation about my future. Our future, she corrected. She said she had been thinking a lot about our relationship and where it was going. She said she loved me, but she was concerned about my maturity level, concerned about my priorities, concerned about whether I was ready for marriage. I sat there with my coffee mug halfway to my mouth, frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. This was the same woman who had $12,000 in credit card debt, the same woman who bought a $3,000 handbag last month and justified it as an investment piece, the same woman who had never paid rent on time in her entire adult life until I took over covering it. The same woman whose car had been repossessed twice before I co-signed on her current lease. Caitlin opened the folder and pulled out the first document. It was a printout of my bank statement, my private bank statement from my personal account that I had not given her access to. I asked her where she got that. She said that was exactly the problem. She said the fact that I was being secretive about my finances showed I was not ready to be a partner. She said married people shared everything, and my refusal to merge our accounts proved I had commitment issues. I had been dating Caitlin for 2 years when she suggested we get engaged. We met at a friend's birthday party at a rooftop bar downtown. She was magnetic. She laughed loud and danced unself-consciously and talked to everyone like they were her best friend. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment and heels so high I wondered how she walked. When she talked to me, she gave me her full attention. She asked about my job and my hobbies and my family. She made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room. We exchanged numbers and started texting immediately. She sent me good morning messages and funny memes and photos of things that made her think of me. The attention felt amazing. I worked as a software engineer at a stable company. I made good money. I saved most of it. I had a retirement account and an emergency fund and investments that I checked quarterly. My life was organized and predictable and maybe a little boring. Caitlin was chaos. She worked in fashion, something vague involving styling and consulting that seemed to pay irregularly. Some months she made good money. Other months she made nothing. She said that was just how creative industries worked. I found it stressful but also exciting. She brought unpredictability into my structured life. She convinced me to do things I normally would not do. Spontaneous weekend trips, expensive restaurants, last-minute concert tickets. She made life feel adventurous. 3 months into dating, Caitlin's landlord raised her rent. She could not afford the increase. She asked if she could crash at my place for a few weeks while she looked for something cheaper. I said yes, because I liked having her around. A few weeks turned into a few months. She never found a cheaper place. She also never offered to pay rent. I did not mind at first. I owned my apartment. The mortgage was manageable. Having her there made the space feel less empty. But I started noticing things. Caitlin ordered delivery food every night. Expensive sushi, Thai food from the trendy place across town. Organic meal kits that cost $30 per serving. She said cooking was not her thing. The delivery bags piled up in the trash. My credit card bills climbed. She always said she would Venmo me her half. She never did. When I mentioned it, she looked hurt. She said she thought we were past keeping score. She said nickel and diming each other was not what people in love did. I felt guilty for bringing it up. I stopped mentioning it. The costs kept climbing. Caitlin's car got repossessed 8 months into our relationship. She called me crying from a parking garage downtown. She said she missed a few payments because work had been slow. She said the financing company was being unreasonable. She said she needed the car for work. Without it, she could not get to client meetings. Without client meetings, she could not make money. Without money, she could not get her car back. The logic was circular, but her panic was real. I asked how much she owed. She said $3,000. I felt my stomach drop. That was a lot of money. But she was crying and desperate, and I wanted to help. I paid it. She got her car back. She promised to make payments on time going forward. She promised to be more responsible. She said this was a wake-up call. I believed her. 2 months later, her car got repossessed again. This time, I did not pay to get it back. I said she needed to figure it out herself. She cried for 3 days. She said I was abandoning her when she needed me most. She said real partners supported each other through hard times. Eventually, she asked if I would co-sign on a new car lease. She said she could not get approved on her own because of her credit. She said she would make every payment herself. She said she just needed my signature. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But she was looking at me with those wide blue eyes, and I wanted to be the kind of partner who helped. I co-signed. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. Caitlin made exactly 2 car payments before I started getting reminders that the payment was late. I asked her about it. She said work was slow again. She said she would catch up next month. Next month came and she did not catch up. I ended up making the car payments myself because my credit was on the line. She said she appreciated it so much. She said she would pay me back when things picked up. Things never picked up. I made the car payments every month for a year and a half. The engagement happened on our second anniversary. We went to dinner at an expensive steakhouse. Caitlin ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. After dinner, she suggested we take a walk by the waterfront. We walked along the pier, looking at the city lights reflected in the water. She stopped at a bench and turned to me. She said she had been thinking about our future. She said she wanted to build a life with me. She said she could see us getting married and buying a house and having kids. She said she wanted to make it official. She asked if I felt the same way. I said yes, because I did feel that way. I loved her. I loved how she made life exciting. I loved how she pushed me out of my comfort zone. I loved the version of myself I was when I was with her. She smiled and kissed me. She said we should start planning. The planning phase revealed a lot. Caitlin wanted a big wedding. She showed me Pinterest boards with elaborate floral arrangements and custom invitations and designer dresses. She talked about destination venues and professional photographers and open bars with premium liquor. I asked about budget. She said we should not limit ourselves based on money. She said a wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event, and we should make it perfect. I asked how we would pay for it. She said we would figure it out. She said people took out loans for weddings all the time. I said I did not want to start our marriage in debt. She said I was being negative. She said I was not thinking big enough. She said if I really loved her, I would want to give her the wedding she dreamed of. I felt the guilt creep in again. Maybe I was being too practical. Maybe I should be more romantic about this. I told her we could plan something nice within a reasonable budget. She said we would see. Over the next few months, Caitlin made deposits on things we had not agreed on. She put down $2,000 on a venue that cost $15,000 total. She ordered invitations that cost $800. She scheduled tastings at caterers whose starting packages were $50 per person. Every time I asked how we were paying for this, she said not to worry about it. She said she had it handled. She did not have it handled. I discovered she was putting everything on credit cards. Not her credit cards. She had maxed those out months ago. She was using cards she opened in both our names. Cards I did not know about. Cards that showed up on my credit report when I checked it before applying for a mortgage pre-approval. I confronted her about the credit cards on a Sunday morning. I showed her my credit report with 3 new cards I never applied for. She looked surprised but not guilty. She said she added me as an authorized user to help build the wedding fund. I said she needed to ask before doing something like that. She said she did not think it was a big deal. She said married couples shared credit anyway. I said we were not married yet, and this was fraud. She said fraud was a strong word. She said she was just trying to plan our wedding. She said I was making her feel bad for wanting something nice. The conversation went in circles. I asked her to close the cards. She said she would once the wedding expenses were paid off. I asked how much she owed. She would not tell me. I called the credit card companies myself. The total was $19,000. $19,000 charged in 6 months for a wedding we had not even set a date for. I felt sick. I sat her down and said we needed to talk about finances seriously. She agreed. She said she had been thinking the same thing. That should have been my first warning. Caitlin prepared for our financial conversation like it was a presentation. She spent 3 days gathering documents. She made a folder. She printed things out. The night she sat me down, she had her serious face on. The face that said she was about to say something important, and I needed to listen. She started by saying she loved me. She said she wanted to spend her life with me. But she had concerns. She said she had been looking at our financial situation and she was worried. She said my approach to money was immature. I asked what she meant. She pulled out my bank statement, the one from my private savings account. I asked again where she got it. She said she found my login information saved on my laptop. She said she needed to understand our full financial picture. I said that account was mine and private. She said that was exactly the problem. She said I was hoarding money while she struggled. She said I had over $40,000 in savings and I was letting her drown in debt. She said that was selfish. She said that was not how partners treated each other. I could not believe what I was hearing. I reminded her that her debt was from wedding expenses I never agreed to. She said I never said no. I said I did say no, multiple times. She said I was being unclear. She said if I really meant no, I should have been more direct. Caitlin continued with her presentation. She pulled out a second document. It was a proposed budget for our shared life. She had calculated our combined income and expenses. Under income, she listed my salary at $95,000 per year. Under her income, she wrote $30,000 with a note that said conservative estimate. Under expenses, she had rent at $0 because I owned my apartment. Utilities at $150 monthly because I paid them. Groceries at $800 because she needed organic. Dining out at $1,200 because she had business meals. Entertainment at $600 for normal life activities. Her car payment at $450 that I was already covering. Her student loans at $300 that I did not know about. The wedding fund contribution at $1,000 per month. Miscellaneous at $500. The total expenses were $5,100 per month. She proposed we each contribute proportionally based on our income. Since I made about 75% of our combined income, I should pay 75% of expenses. That came out to $3,800 per month from me. She would contribute $1,200. I looked at this budget and felt my blood pressure rising. I was already paying for everything. This budget formalized me paying for everything while she contributed a fraction, and still kept most of her income. I asked what she planned to do with the rest of her money. She said she needed it for personal expenses, clothing for work, beauty treatments, self-care, therapy. I asked if therapy was covered by insurance. She said she did not have insurance. I asked why not. She said her job did not offer it, and private insurance was expensive. I told her she could get on my insurance when we got married. She said that was months away, and she needed therapy now. I took a breath and tried to approach this calmly. I said her budget did not account for my savings goals. I had automated transfers to my retirement account and my investment account and my emergency fund. Those came out to about $2,500 per month. She said that was part of the problem. She said I was prioritizing abstract future money over our present needs. She said retirement was decades away, and we had immediate concerns. She said my obsession with saving was preventing us from living our lives. I said saving was responsible. She said it was excessive. She said I was being controlled by fear and scarcity mindset. She said I needed to learn to enjoy the present. She said she was worried I would never be able to relax and enjoy life. She said that was why she was concerned about my maturity. She said truly mature people understood that life was about balance, not just accumulating money in accounts I never used. I sat there stunned. This woman who had never saved $1 in her life was calling me immature for having financial discipline. This woman who had $12,000 in credit card debt and counting was lecturing me about balance. I asked if she was serious. She said completely serious. She said she had even talked to her therapist about it, and her therapist agreed that my behavior showed emotional unavailability. I asked what therapist. Caitlin said she had been seeing someone for 3 months, a woman named Dr. Rebecca Foster, who specialized in relationships and financial psychology. I asked how she was paying for therapy if she did not have insurance and no money. She looked uncomfortable. She said she put it on a credit card. I asked which credit card. She said one of the ones with both our names. I felt anger rise in my chest. She was charging therapy sessions to discuss my supposed financial immaturity to a credit card that I was legally responsible for. The irony was so thick, I could not breathe. I told her this conversation was over. She said that was exactly what her therapist said would happen. She said Dr. Foster warned her that I would shut down when confronted with my issues. She said my refusal to engage was proof that I was not ready for marriage. I stood up from the table. I told Caitlin we needed to postpone the wedding until we sorted out our financial situation. She looked horrified. She said we could not postpone. She said deposits were paid. She said invitations were ordered. She said people knew. I said none of that mattered if we could not have an honest conversation about money. She started crying. She said I was humiliating her. She said I was making her look bad in front of her family and friends. She said if I loved her, I would not do this. I said if she loved me, she would not have opened credit cards in my name without asking. The fight lasted 3 hours. It ended with Caitlin grabbing her purse and leaving. She said she needed space. She said she was going to stay with her sister for a few days. She said I should use that time to think about what kind of man I wanted to be. She said I could either be someone who supported his partner or someone who prioritized money over love. She left, and I sat in my apartment alone, surrounded by the evidence of her financial chaos. I looked at the bank statement she printed. I looked at the budget she proposed. I looked at the credit card statements I pulled up on my computer. I added up all the money I had spent on her over 2 years. Rent she never paid, estimate $18,000. Food and entertainment, estimate $15,000. Car payments, estimate $8,000. The engagement ring I bought, $6,000. The deposits on wedding things, estimate $5,000. Various emergency expenses and gifts and random things, estimate $8,000. The total came to $60,000. I had spent $60,000 supporting someone who called me immature and financially irresponsible. The realization made me feel sick and stupid and angry all at once. I called my best friend Ryan that night. We had known each other since college. He was an accountant who worked for a big firm downtown. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I needed to end this relationship immediately. He said Caitlin was financially abusive. I said that seemed extreme. Ryan said opening credit cards in my name without permission was literally fraud. He said charging tens of thousands of dollars and expecting me to pay it was financial exploitation. He said flipping the script and calling me irresponsible was gaslighting. He said I needed to protect myself legally and financially before this got worse. I said I loved her. Ryan said I loved the person I thought she was, not the person she actually was. He said the person she actually was just told me I was immature for having savings while she racked up debt in my name. I knew he was right, but I did not want to accept it. I said I would think about it. Ryan said not to think too long. He said every day I stayed was another day she could destroy my credit and my financial future. Caitlin came back 3 days later. She walked into the apartment like nothing happened. She kissed my cheek and asked what was for dinner. I said we needed to finish our conversation. She sighed. She said she was tired of fighting about money. She said she talked to her sister and her therapist, and they both agreed that I was being unreasonable. She said the solution was simple. She said we needed to fully combine our finances like married people do. She said that would solve the trust issues and the secrecy and everything else. I asked if she was serious. She said completely serious. She already talked to her bank about adding me to her accounts, and she wanted me to add her to mine. I asked why she wanted access to my accounts if she thought I was hoarding money irresponsibly. She said because she could help me learn to use money in healthier ways. She said she could teach me to invest in experiences and relationships instead of just accumulating savings. I told her no. I said I would not give her access to my accounts. Her face changed. She said that proved she was right about me. She said I did not trust her. She said I was not ready for marriage. I said she was right. I was not ready for marriage. Not to her. Not like this. I told Caitlin I wanted to break up. She stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. She said I did not mean that. I said I absolutely meant it. She asked if I was really going to throw away 2 years over a disagreement about budgets. I said it was not about budgets. It was about honesty and respect and partnership. I said she opened credit cards in my name without asking. She charged $19,000 I did not agree to spend. She accessed my private financial information without permission. She called me immature and irresponsible for having savings while she had nothing but debt. None of that was a partnership. That was exploitation. Caitlin started crying. She said I was being cruel. She said she never exploited me. She said everything she did was for us, for our future, for our wedding. I said she did it without my consent or input. She said consent was a weird thing to require in a relationship. I said it was the most basic thing to require. She said I was making her feel like a criminal for trying to plan our life together. I said she committed fraud. She said fraud was a legal term and I was not a lawyer. I said she was right. I was not a lawyer. But I was going to talk to one. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. That stopped her crying. She asked what I meant. I said I meant I was going to consult a lawyer about how to handle the credit cards and the debt and separating our finances. She said that was insane. She said lawyers were expensive and unnecessary. She said we could figure this out ourselves. I said we tried that, and it did not work. She said I was being dramatic. She said she would close the credit cards if that was what I wanted. I said it was too late for that. The damage was done. My credit was already affected. I needed legal advice on how to protect myself. Caitlin stood up. She said if I brought lawyers into this, we were done. She said she would not be with someone who treated her like an enemy. I said then, we were done. She grabbed her purse and her jacket. She said she would come back for her things later. She said I was making the biggest mistake of my life. She said I would regret this when I was alone and miserable and realized I threw away someone who actually loved me. She slammed the door on her way out. I sat on my couch and felt relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. I called a lawyer the next morning. His name was David Monroe, and he had practiced family law for 15 years. His office was downtown in a building with marble floors and expensive art. I met with him at 2 p.m. I brought every document I could find. Bank statements, credit card statements, emails, texts, the budget Caitlin created. David reviewed everything carefully. He asked questions about timeline and consent and documentation. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, I had a strong case for fraud. He said opening credit cards in someone's name without explicit permission was illegal. He said I could file a police report. I asked if that was necessary. David said it depended on what I wanted. If I wanted to completely separate myself from the debt and restore my credit, I would need to report the fraud. That would mean Caitlin could face criminal charges. If I just wanted to end the relationship and move on, I could try to settle the debt and take the credit hit. I asked what he recommended. He said from a legal standpoint, reporting the fraud was the cleanest solution. From a personal standpoint, I had to decide if I could live with the consequences of pressing charges against someone I was engaged to. I spent 2 days thinking about it. I looked at my credit report showing accounts I never opened. I looked at the $19,000 in debt attached to my name. I thought about the $60,000 I already spent. I thought about Caitlin calling me immature and irresponsible while she destroyed my financial stability. I thought about her therapist agreeing that I had problems. I thought about the budget where she wanted me to pay 75% of everything while she kept most of her income. I thought about her accessing my private bank accounts without permission. I thought about 2 years of manipulation disguised as love. I called David Monroe back. I told him I wanted to file a police report. He said he would walk me through the process. He said I should prepare for this to get ugly. Caitlin would not take it well. I said I understood. He said he would draft a formal letter to send to the credit card companies disputing the charges as fraudulent. He said I should gather any evidence showing I did not authorize the accounts. I said I had emails and texts where I specifically told Caitlin I did not want more debt. David said that was perfect. The police report happened on a Friday morning. I went to the precinct downtown and asked to file a fraud report. The officer who took my statement was named Detective James Lawson. He had been with the department for 12 years and worked in financial crimes. I showed him everything. The credit report, the credit card statements, the emails where I told Caitlin not to open accounts, the text messages where she admitted she added me without asking. Detective Lawson took notes and asked clarifying questions. He asked if I lived with Caitlin. I said yes. He asked if she had access to my personal information. I said yes. She lived in my apartment and could access my laptop and mail. He said that complicated things. In cohabitation situations, it was harder to prove lack of consent because the person had legitimate access to information. But the emails and texts where I explicitly said no would help. He said he would investigate and follow up. He said this could take weeks or months. I said I understood. He gave me a case number and told me to keep records of everything. I left the precinct feeling like I had crossed a point of no return. Caitlin found out about the police report within 3 days. I do not know how. Maybe Detective Lawson contacted her. Maybe someone saw me at the precinct. Maybe she just sensed something changed. She showed up at my apartment at 8 at night. She did not knock. She still had her key. She walked in while I was making dinner and started screaming. She said I called the police on her. She said I was trying to get her arrested. She said I was destroying her life over credit cards. I stayed calm. I said she committed fraud and I was protecting myself. She said it was not fraud because we were engaged, and engaged people shared finances. I said that was not how the law worked. She asked if I even loved her. I said I did not know anymore. She said I was a monster. She said she gave me 2 years of her life, and this was how I repaid her. I pointed out that I gave her $60,000. She said that was my choice. I said opening credit cards in my name was not my choice. She called me pathetic. She called me controlling. She called me abusive for using the legal system to hurt her. The irony of her calling me abusive while screaming in my home was not lost on me. I told Caitlin to leave. She said this was her home too. I said it was not. Her name was not on the deed or the mortgage. She was a guest who overstayed her welcome. She said she had tenant rights. I said she did not pay rent, so she did not have tenant rights. She said she would call the police. I said go ahead. I already filed a report against her. She stared at me with pure hatred. Then she started grabbing things. Her clothes from the closet, her toiletries from the bathroom, her shoes from the hallway. She threw everything into garbage bags. She moved frantically, crying and yelling the whole time. She said I ruined her life. She said everyone would know what kind of person I was. She said she would tell everyone the truth about me. I said she should tell them the truth. The truth was, she committed fraud, and I reported it. She said that was not the truth. The truth was, I was a controlling, abusive, emotionally stunted man who called the police on his fiancée for trying to plan their wedding. I did not argue. There was no point. She grabbed her bags and left. This time she threw her key at me. It hit the wall and fell to the floor. I locked the door behind her and felt the weight of 2 years lift off my shoulders. The social media campaign started immediately. Caitlin posted a long message about emotional abuse and financial control. She said she was engaged to someone who monitored every dollar she spent, someone who refused to support her dreams, someone who called the police on her for using joint credit cards to plan their wedding. She said she was devastated but free. She said she was sharing her story to warn other women about men who weaponize money as control. The post got hundreds of likes and comments. People I knew and people I did not know shared it. They called me abusive. They called me controlling. They said Caitlin deserved better. My phone filled with messages from mutual friends asking what happened. Some were genuinely asking. Some were accusatory. I did not respond to any of them. David Monroe told me not to engage on social media. He said anything I posted could be used against me if Caitlin tried to fight the fraud charges. I followed his advice and stayed silent. But the silence let her narrative spread unchecked. My sister Rebecca called me 3 days into the social media storm. She lived across the country and we talked every few weeks. She said she saw Caitlin's posts because a mutual friend shared them. She asked if any of it was true. I told her the whole story. Rebecca was quiet while I talked. When I finished, she said she never liked Caitlin. She said something always felt off, but she could not put her finger on it. Now she knew what it was. Caitlin was a user. Rebecca said she saw this pattern before in her friends' relationships. Someone who presented as fun and spontaneous, but was actually just financially irresponsible and looking for someone to fund their lifestyle. She said I did the right thing filing the police report. She said I should not feel guilty. I said I did feel guilty. Guilty for not seeing it sooner. Guilty for letting it go this far. Guilty for all the money I wasted. Rebecca said the money was gone, but I still had my future. I needed to focus on that. She said I should block Caitlin on everything and move forward. I said I would try. Detective Lawson called me 2 weeks after I filed the report. He said he interviewed Caitlin. She admitted opening the credit card accounts but claimed I gave her verbal permission. He said without written proof of permission, and with my email specifically saying not to create more debt, he believed there was enough evidence to pursue charges. He said the district attorney would decide whether to prosecute. He said these cases were tricky because relationships complicated consent, but the dollar amount and the documentation helped my case. He said he would keep me updated. I thanked him and hung up feeling vindicated and terrified. Vindicated because someone official believed me. Terrified because I had really started something that could put my ex-fiancée in jail. I knew it was the right thing to do legally. I did not know if I could live with it emotionally. The therapy started 3 weeks after the breakup. My regular doctor recommended someone when I went in for a stress-related appointment. My blood pressure was high. I was not sleeping well. I was having anxiety attacks at work. My doctor said I was experiencing trauma symptoms and should talk to someone. She referred me to Dr. Michael Foster, who specialized in relationship trauma and financial abuse. I met with him on a Thursday afternoon. His office was warm and comfortable with soft lighting and plants everywhere. He asked me to tell him what brought me in. I told him about Caitlin, about the 2 years, about the money, about the fraud, about the police report, about the social media campaign calling me abusive. Dr. Foster listened without judgment. When I finished, he He said what I experienced was financial abuse. He said it was a pattern where one partner exploited the other's resources while simultaneously making the victim feel guilty for having boundaries. He said Caitlin's response of calling me immature and irresponsible was classic projection. He said abusers often accused their victims of the exact behaviors they were guilty of. It shifted blame and made the victim question their own reality. Dr. Foster helped me understand how I ended up in this situation. He said I had a pattern of proving my worth through generosity. He said that made me vulnerable to people who equated love with financial support. He said Caitlin saw that vulnerability and exploited it. Then when I finally set boundaries, she panicked and escalated. The police report threatened her narrative of being a victim, so she went public with her own narrative to control the story. Dr. Foster said this was common. He said I should prepare for the social fallout to continue. He said some people would believe her version no matter what evidence I presented. I needed to make peace with that. I asked how to make peace with being called an abuser when I was the one who was abused. He said by knowing the truth and trusting that truth would reveal itself to the people who mattered. I left that session feeling like maybe I could survive this. The credit card companies were my next battle. David Monroe sent formal dispute letters to all 3 cards Caitlin opened. The letters outlined the fraud claim and included the police report number. 2 companies responded within a week. They said they would investigate and freeze the accounts pending resolution. The 3rd company said I was listed as an authorized user with access to account information, so I was responsible for the debt regardless of who made the charges. David said we could fight that. He said case law supported the argument that authorized user status without explicit consent could be challenged. We filed additional paperwork. The company pushed back. David said it might require going to court. I asked how much that would cost. He said his retainer was $5,000 and the case could take months. I looked at the account balance. $14,000. I did the math. Fighting it could cost almost as much as just paying it. David said that was Caitlin's gamble. She was betting I would just pay rather than fight. I asked what he recommended. He said from a purely financial standpoint, paying might be cheaper. From a principle standpoint, fighting would set a precedent and protect others from similar situations. I said I would think about it. The decision was made for me when Detective Lawson called again. He said the district attorney was moving forward with criminal charges against Caitlin, 3 counts of identity theft and fraud. He said they had enough evidence between my emails, her admission, and the financial records. He said Caitlin would be arrested and arraigned. He asked if I was prepared for that. I said I did not know. He said I should be. He said Caitlin would likely blame me publicly, and the backlash could intensify. I asked when this would happen. He said within a week. I thanked him and sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building, trying to process that my ex-fiancée was going to be arrested because of a report I filed. The guilt was overwhelming. Then I remembered the $60,000. I remembered her calling me immature. I remembered her accessing my bank accounts without permission. I remembered the budget where she wanted me to fund her life while she kept her money. The guilt faded. This was her choice. She chose to commit fraud. I just chose to stop enabling it. Caitlin was arrested on a Wednesday morning. I know because she posted about it immediately after being released. She shared a photo of herself looking devastated with a caption about being arrested for the crime of loving the wrong person. She said I weaponized the legal system to punish her for wanting a nice wedding. She said she was facing felony charges because her ex-fiancé was vindictive and cruel. She said she was innocent and would fight this in court. The post went viral in our social circle. My phone exploded with messages. Some people were horrified that I got her arrested. Some people asked for my side of the story. Some people said they always knew something was off about her. I did not respond to anyone except my sister and Ryan. Rebecca said Caitlin's post made her sound guilty. Playing the victim this hard usually meant the accusations were true. Ryan said the same thing. He said innocent people did not need to perform their innocence on social media. I said I hoped they were right, because I was starting to doubt myself. The court hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. David Monroe said I might need to testify. He said the prosecutor handling the case was named Linda Pearson, and she had 15 years of experience in white-collar crime. He said she was thorough and smart and confident this case would result in a conviction or guilty plea. He arranged a meeting for me to talk to her before the hearing. We met at the district attorney's office downtown. Linda Pearson was in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She shook my hand and got straight to business. She asked me to walk her through the timeline of my relationship with Caitlin and the financial abuse. I told her everything. She took notes and asked specific questions about dates and amounts and communications. When I finished, she said this was a clear case. She said Caitlin opened accounts using my information without consent and charged significant amounts. The fact that I had documented telling her not to create debt made it even clearer. She said most financial fraud cases in relationships were hard to prosecute because they lacked documentation. Mine had extensive documentation. She said she was confident. Linda asked if I was prepared for the defense strategy. She said Caitlin's lawyer would argue that we were engaged and planning a life together, so using shared resources was reasonable. They would paint me as bitter about the breakup and using the legal system for revenge. They would highlight that Caitlin had access to my information because we lived together. They would say the relationship dynamics were complex and consent was implied. Linda said I needed to be ready to hear all of that and stay calm. I said I would try. She said the truth was on my side. The emails where I said no to more debt were unambiguous. The fact that I filed the police report immediately after discovering the extent of the fraud showed it was not about revenge. The financial records showing I had already supported her extensively proved I was not being stingy. She said we had a strong case. I left feeling somewhat reassured. The hearing arrived on a cold morning in late autumn. I wore a suit and met David outside the courthouse. He said to stay calm, answer questions directly, and do not let the defense attorney rattle me. We went through security and found the courtroom. Caitlin was already there with her lawyer, a man in his 50s with gray hair and an expensive suit. Caitlin would not look at me. She sat with her hands folded on the table, looking small and sad. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered everything, and the feeling passed. The judge arrived, and the hearing began. Linda Pearson presented the case. She outlined the charges, submitted the evidence, and called me to testify. I took the stand and swore to tell the truth. Linda asked me to describe my relationship with Caitlin and the financial arrangement. I explained how it started with small things and escalated. I explained how I discovered the credit cards. I explained the confrontation and her response. Linda submitted the emails and texts into evidence. She asked me to confirm these were authentic communications. I said they were. Caitlin's lawyer cross-examined me. His name was Richard Thorne, and he had practiced criminal defense for 28 years. He asked if I loved Caitlin. I said I did at one point. He asked if we were planning to get married. I said we were engaged before I discovered the fraud. He asked if I ever gave Caitlin money voluntarily. I said yes. He asked how much. I said approximately $60,000 over 2 years. He said so I was generous with my resources when it suited me, but vindictive when it did not. I said that was not accurate. I was generous until I discovered she was committing fraud. He said the credit cards were for our shared wedding. I said they were opened without my knowledge or consent. He said I lived with her and gave her access to my personal information. I said access to information is not the same as consent to commit fraud. He said consent in relationships was complicated. I said not when someone explicitly says no in writing. He moved on. He asked if I filed the police report before or after we broke up. I said after. He said so this was about revenge. I said it was about protecting my financial future from someone who had already taken $60,000 and was attempting to take more. The cross-examination lasted 30 minutes. Richard Thorne tried to paint me as controlling and bitter. He tried to make the jury sympathize with Caitlin as a young woman in love who made mistakes. But every time he tried, Linda Pearson objected with evidence. The emails saying no, the bank statements showing my existing generosity, the timeline showing immediate action after discovery, not revenge months later. When the testimony ended, the judge said she would review the evidence and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. David said that was standard. He said it went well. He said my testimony was clear and credible. I said I hoped he was right. We left the courthouse and I went home and slept for 12 hours straight. The ruling came back in 10 days. Judge Marion Clark found Caitlin guilty on 2 counts of identity theft and 1 count of fraud. She was sentenced to 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution of $19,000. She was also ordered to attend financial counseling. The sentence was lighter than it could have been. Linda Pearson said first-time offenders in relationship fraud cases often got probation instead of jail time. She said the restitution order was the important part. It legally established that Caitlin owed the debt, not me. I could use that judgment to clear my credit report. David said we should immediately send the judgment to the credit card companies and the credit bureaus. I said I would. I felt relief mixed with something that felt like grief. This was really over. 2 years of my life had led to a courtroom and a criminal conviction and a debt that would follow Caitlin for years. I did not feel happy about it. I just felt tired. The aftermath was messy. Caitlin posted about the conviction saying the justice system failed her. She said she was convicted for the crime of being in love with the wrong person. Some people still believed her. Most people had moved on. The friends who mattered reached out to say they were sorry for doubting me. The friends who did not reach out were not really friends. My sister flew in to visit for a week. We did not talk about Caitlin much. We just spent time together, and I remembered what healthy relationships felt like. Ryan took me out for drinks to celebrate the end of the case. He said he was proud of me for following through. He said a lot of people would have just paid the debt and moved on to avoid conflict. I said sometimes conflict was necessary. He agreed. Work went back to normal, and back to... My blood pressure came down. I slept better. I kept seeing Dr. Foster monthly. We talked about patterns and boundaries and building healthier relationships in the future. 6 months after the conviction, I got a check in the mail. It was from Caitlin for $350. The memo line said, restitution payment, 1 of 54. I did the math. 54 payments of $350 would take 4.5 years. She would be paying me back in installments until she was past 30. I deposited the check and felt something shift. This was real consequence. Not just a legal ruling, but actual impact on her life for years to come. I did not feel happy about it. I did not feel sad either. I just felt like maybe justice actually meant something. Dr. Foster said that was growth. He said I was moving from anger to acceptance. He said that was healthy. I said I still felt guilty sometimes. He said that was normal. Guilt meant I had empathy. Lack of guilt would be concerning. I just needed to remember that consequences were not the same as cruelty. Caitlin made choices. Those choices had outcomes. I did not create those outcomes. I just stopped preventing them. I saw Caitlin one more time about a year after everything ended. I was having coffee at a place downtown, and she walked in with someone I did not recognize. She saw me and froze. I nodded at her. She nodded back. We did not speak. She ordered her coffee and left quickly. I sat there thinking about how much had changed. A year ago, she was living in my apartment planning a wedding with my money. Now she was a stranger with a criminal record and a debt she would pay for years. I finished my coffee and went back to work. That night, I went through my apartment and realized I had finally removed every trace of her. The last box of her things was gone. The photos were deleted. The memories were fading. I was building a new life without her shadow over it. I started dating someone new a few months later. Someone who had her own career and savings and paid for her half of dates without being asked. Someone who respected my boundaries and communicated clearly. Someone who made me feel like a partner, not an ATM. It felt different. It felt healthy. It felt like what I should have had all along. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.